Hello, everyone. Today I will be interviewing Callie Hague. She is a partner with Jetlaw, so she is actually an aviation attorney. I think you're really going to enjoy our chat today, so let's get started.
My first question for you is, what is your job and what do you do in your job?
So I'm an aviation attorney. I'm a partner at Jetlaw in Washington, D.C., and my job is very interesting. So I primarily do 4 different areas of law. The first one is business jet transactions and some airline transactions as well. So when a flight department is buying a new aircraft, whether that's an entry-level jet or a big global, they will come to us and we'll help them with the contract process. So that involves everything from helping them go through the pre-purchase inspection to signing the actual contract with the buyer or seller, and then going through the closing process and filing documents. I also do a lot of work in the airport field, and that's a mix of representing airport authorities and then also representing tenants that are leasing or building hangars or other buildings on the airport and working through them with those different issues that just come as being on an airport. I also do FAA enforcement defense for our different corporate clients. So if one of their pilots has an altitude violation or maybe there's a maintenance issue, then we'll walk those companies through that certificate defense process for their pilots, and if they're a charter operator, for that certificate as well. And then the final bucket is what I call miscellaneous, and that is just things you probably wouldn't even know exist that we work with. So we have clients that do crop dusting that have really interesting issues. We have clients that work with NASA and that are doing cross-border projects with the Canadian government. And so NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, comes into play, which happens to impact aviation. So that's my miscellaneous bucket.
That is a lot.
It is always different and exciting.
Yeah. So I'm sure you really enjoy that because it is so diverse, and I'm sure not every day is the same.
No, I'd say no 2 days are alike. A typical day for me, there really isn't such a thing as a typical day, but so for example, today, most of my day is calls with clients. I have a call with FAA headquarters today to talk about an airport issue. Yesterday, I was in Indiana flying our firm's aircraft to go meet with a new client there that just finished a transaction with us. So I'm not primarily a pilot, but I do fly quite a bit every month and every year.
No kidding. It must be nice to just hop on the company jet and off you go.
It's fun.
Yeah, that's a nice perk. So let me ask you, how did you get into aviation law?
Oh, that's a good question. So let me back up and start in high school. So when I was a junior, I had the opportunity to go to our local airport. The runway there was 4,000 feet, so only really small jets could come in. It was primarily training. And I drove down. I had just learned to drive, and I remember it was pouring rain and it was kind of scary to drive in the rain, but I drove down to this airport and they were so nice there, and they gave me a tour. And I got to see the FBO and all the different planes. And I thought, this is really fun. I think this is something that I'd enjoy doing. So I started flying in my senior year of high school and got my private pilot's license a couple weeks after I graduated from high school. And then went and did a 141 program and went all the way through my commercial license and flight instructor ratings. And then the economy crashed and there were no pilot jobs to be had. So I had to kind of rethink what I wanted to do. And that was 2010, and there just really weren't options for flying unless I went the military route, and I have horrible eyesight, so I just didn't think that was going to be a good option. So When I was at Kansas State University, I took an aviation law class that was part of the required curriculum, and I really enjoyed that. And I think through that class, I realized just how many different situations pilots and companies encounter where they need an attorney to help them navigate either, whether it's like a transaction, which we talked about, or maybe FAA enforcement. And I thought, I have a unique background where I am a pilot, I speak the lingo, I understand what it's like to, not understand a communication from ATC, or, you got stepped on and you maybe heard something that was just a partial transmission. And I thought this could be a really unique opportunity for me to go to law school and be able to help pilots and companies who need assistance. So that's how my path took me to law school.
Wow, so nobody in your family is a pilot?
No, I am the first.
So it wasn't like you went to an air show and you saw the planes flying and it inspired you, or family was a pilot. You just went down to the airport and fell in love.
Air shows were a big part of it too, because before going to the airport, that was my only exposure to aviation that wasn't an airline. And I think air shows are a really wonderful part of general aviation, because you get to go walk around and see small planes that you don't have visibility to otherwise, and talk with the pilot. So that definitely played a role in it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So how long was, from college to where you are now, how long was education for you?
So for me, I did a Bachelor's of Science in a professional pilot program at Kansas State University, which is a 4-year program. I was fortunate enough to come in with a number of credits from doing advanced placement courses in high school, and so I finished that in 3 years, and also because I had my private pilot's license already. And then from there I went straight to law school, which is 3 years. So it was 6 years for me to get to be an attorney.
Wow, you went through quick.
Yeah, it was fast.
Yeah. Would you say would be beneficial for someone going into aviation law?
So, at the heart of it, attorneys are professional writers. I spend the majority of my day writing, whether it's emails, whether it's memos or letters or briefs. Writing is the single most important skill that you can have. And then followed up by your verbal communication, because I spend a lot of time on conference calls and leading discussions. So those two are the most important. I would say I was fortunate that in high school I had excellent English teachers, which really helped prepare me for that, because my Bachelor's of Science really didn't focus on writing at all. So that was, by far the biggest part of law school, was being able to write clearly. So those are the most important skills. But if you want to do aviation law, having a background in aviation is a big bonus, because as you know from watching these different videos, aviation is nuanced, it's highly regulated, and it's very technical. And you don't have to be a pilot to be an aviation attorney. You could have a background in flying drones or other UAS operations. You could be an engineer that does aerospace, and that would give you a great deal of knowledge that you'd be able to apply. You could have a military background, or you could be a mechanic. But I think having some background in aviation is a huge advantage. And as attorneys, for many different situations that we deal with, there's no playbook. Your client's hiring you because you know the law, or maybe you don't know the law, but you're really good at researching, so you can figure it out. And you're creative, and so you can think through the process and say, okay, the law says this, and this is your situation, so let's figure out how to get from A to B, and let's be creative about it so we can find a creative solution that will work for everybody. And communication plays a huge role in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say for any of our virtual campers that are starting to prepare and thinking about going to college? What would you say they would need to get involved with, or what should they be focused on, before they start applying to colleges?
That's a great question. I can't say that there's one thing that you need to focus on, but if you're interested in law, or if you're interested really in any kind of aviation, I think anything that involves leadership or being part of a team is important. If you think about it from the pilot perspective, at some point you're going to be flying with another pilot, and maybe you'll have a flight crew of flight attendants as well. And so being able to work with a team is really important. I mean, your life and the safety of your passengers will depend on it. If you're going the aviation law route, then anything that challenges you intellectually would be great. So you can do National Honor Society, or something else like that just gives you more exposure to communication. That's a win. But also think too about what you can do to start getting involved in aviation. So obviously, like, the summer camp is an amazing opportunity, and I wish I had had that option when I was in high school. But I didn't, so I worked at a local FBO. I worked on the ramp and I fueled airplanes. I worked at the front desk at the flight school. And that was great exposure for just kind of figuring out what aviation might be like for me, since I didn't have anyone in my family that had done that before I was starting from square one. Yeah. And I don't work at an FBO now, but just what I learned from that helped me see what kind of people were in aviation, and that this was something that I really wanted to do.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a great opportunity for networking while you were working at the FBO. Just getting to know people is half of the challenge, I feel like, getting into the aviation door.
That is an excellent point. So I think there is a stereotype in at least general aviation that you have to know someone to get into the industry. And that is not entirely true, but I would say it's extremely helpful. And you would be surprised at where you can network. So for me, when I'm 16 and 17 working at this FBO, I still keep in touch with people that I know from that. I've met so many people along the way that I had no idea what role they would play in my career, but it's really fun to see kind of how that is unfolded. And I would say the more contacts you have in aviation, first of all, the more chance that might lead to a great job for you in the future. But even if that doesn't, just having a really broad range of people that you can reach out to is so important, because you're going to run into so many hundreds and thousands of questions along the way that you don't have the answer to. And if you have someone who knows airports and knows things about military aviation and aviation law, you'll have a network that you can reach out to, and they'll be able to help point you in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm sure you gained a few mentors along the way, which is always nice to have.
Yes, and I think mentorship is something that you should really commit to, but also always be looking for your next mentor. You can't say, well, now I'm 30 or now I'm 35. I don't need mentors anymore. You always need a mentor. And I've had so many in so many different areas of aviation. So when I was at K-State, I was really interested in airports. And so I just sort of by chance met the director of the Salina Airport and talked with him at a student event. And I said, do you have an internship program? And he said, well, I don't, but if you would like to intern, you could send me your resume. So I sent him my resume, and that's how I got my first internship. And through that, I met so many other people that I still keep in touch with today, and that have been wonderful mentors and contacts for me in the airport world.
Yeah, absolutely. So one last question. What is your favorite part of your job?
Oh man, I have so many favorite parts of my job, but to me, the very best part is that I started out as a pilot and I thought I was going to work for an airline, and that didn't work. But I found this amazing law firm that has an airplane that I get to fly, and that allows me to stay current as a pilot so I can really connect with my clients, and I get to fly to go see them for meetings and help them navigate just all sorts of really interesting situations, and being a pilot and an attorney really makes a difference to them, and I like seeing that.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like a really cool job. And you're not the first person I've talked to that said, "Yeah, I was sure I was going to go in the airlines. That's what I wanted to do, but it just didn't work out." So I feel like so many people I talk to find a different passion within aviation along the way as they're working towards something.
That's very true. I think, when you go to college or when you decide on what technical program you're going to do in aviation, it's important to have a plan and visualize where you think you're going to be in 5 or 6 years, but be flexible. I mean, aviation's all about being flexible. And one of the great things about this industry is that you can decide, okay, I'm going to be an airline pilot and get all the training for that, like I did. And then something will happen and you pivot and you end up still in aviation in a great or maybe even career that you'll enjoy more. And all those skills you learned to do your first choice are going to apply so well to what you end up doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for hopping on with us. Is there anything else that you want to add? Maybe some wise words of wisdom to pass to our campers?
Sure. So I will share with you what someone told me when I was working at my first job at that FBO. I was giving a couple pilots a ride to their hotel in one of our crew cars, and I told them that I was training to be a pilot and was going to an aviation program. And one of them told me, he said, "Just remember, aviation is a really small community, and be nice to everybody, because you never know when someone you've met is going to show up later in your career." And that is the all-time best advice I've ever received, and I can't tell you how many times it's happened that I've met someone along the way and just a by chance meeting, and then 5 or 6 years later they're now a client, or I'm negotiating on the other side of a deal. So be nice to everybody. You will, after just even being in this industry for a decade, you will know so many people, and it just is a really fun place to be.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate you hopping on here with me so we could chat a little bit about being an aviation lawyer and a commercial pilot.
Well, thank you so much, Kimberly. This was really fun.